For the eastern states, there will be not quite as many unless we can come to an agreement with some of the station network owners. So currently, it looks like we had to pull out West Texas, Kansas, Oklahoma, and New York from being able to be displayed. So there's some issues that we have with the data availability that we're trying to work through with those network owners to try and ingest their information and then calculate fire danger and display and have that available. We're hoping to come to some sort of agreement. We are ready to move forward with that if we can just figure out a way to limit the availability of the data. So that's kind of one of the things. So with this is that data, or for those mesonets, let me do a quick screen share what this is going to look like. All right, everybody, you got my screen? Just making sure. All right. So in the weather, we have all of our usual information. When you go to the filters now, we'll start seeing in the staging environment. And again, this will be the next one. You'll have the ASOS and mesonets. So again, you'll be able to bring in the mesonet stations in here. You will start seeing, I'm sorry, that's also only in the dev environment. I should open that up. Give me 1 second. I apologize. I thought I had this one ready to go here, guys. So you'll see though that we do have the network filters set up in here. So you'll be able to filter by networks, starting to increase our list of filtering availability. The other pieces on here that we have done is we are working on getting a more robust, or working on the limits for the downloads. So that you're able to download more information. So I believe that one will be part of 3.5. And the other piece in staging will be that we do have, or we're working on getting the availability for manipulation of the sites, but there's a lot of questions that still need to be resolved around this in the catalog manipulation. So don't get too happy about it, but we do have this built in here where you'd be able to update the, or I should say the FEMS admins will be able to update the live fuel moisture catalog. So this is only going to be available to like 3 or 4 people for the time being, because there's a lot of background that has to go into this before we start doing recalculations of the models and updating the model information. So, but this is available, or it should be getting finalized for the 3.5 release. Additionally, like I said, when we went into the dev environment, when I do the filters, see if it's populating now. No, they've been digging too much into the networks. There we go. You can see that we still have some of the state networks in here. So we have Carolina, Maine, a little bit of New Hampshire, and then Eastern Texas, these mesonets. This network will be available. I think there's also going to be a few in Colorado, Denver, and Colorado and New Mexico as well. But so those state networks will be available coming in the December release, and we'll be able to calculate fire danger for those as well. So ASOS are still available. So if you just want to look through those, that is available as well. And then again, just the different filtering buttons as you move through the system. So let's see here. The other piece I'm actually kind of hoping to have a little bit more of a discussion on, and I'm hoping, John, if you don't mind, maybe coming off of mute, and I'd like to have this discussion with you about the forecast information. You sent an email, was that late last week, about the differences between the NBM, NDFD, and I'm going to go over again our forecast information. There have been some more questions about our forecast, when it comes in, how it comes in, and what we're displaying. So I'm going to go back over that again just so everybody sees it. Let's see here. Where do I have that one? Station. Why am I? Oh, I'm in the wrong one. Apologize. Where? All right. So again, where we're pulling our weather information from, forecast comes in once daily at 0300 Zulu, so around 10 o'clock Pacific time. The majority of the information for our forecast comes in from the NDFD, except for the precip and solar radiation. Those come from the NVM, so kind of a mixture of two different gridded models that we're bringing in. It is for the full 7-day forecast. So that's and it's only updated the one time once a day. So when that's a different thought. So we used to get in, in WIMS, it used to come in at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Now you're getting the most recent information, the most updated forecast at 06, 07, 0800 in the morning. When you come in, you'll have the most updated forecast to be reviewing and making decisions on for that day. And it does not update throughout the day. It is just that once a day forecast. And I know, so there have been some discussions about how the model is handling certain information. So really it's been having, I guess the NBM is a little bit an NDFD possibly, John, on RH. That's kind of the discussion piece that I was hoping to talk to you about and see if you can kind of enlighten that opportunity or enlighten the audience on where some of the biases are with these models and where some of the errors may be coming in.
Sure. So the NDFD is the official forecast product from the National Weather Service. And in the past with WIMS, the Weather Service offices were each inputting a single text file, which encompassed a 7-day forecast for every NFDRS station that is within their realm of responsibility. Again, so that was at least in some form a human-edited text forecast. The variety of editing could widely vary, just depending on the offices. So instead of that text forecast, now the National Digital Forecast Database, NDFD, is comprised of the edits that are made by the Weather Service forecasters to their gridded weather data. What I will state is that for many regions, in particular eastern area, southern area, which are our eastern region and southern region, there's a policy to for every forecast cycle, so at least twice a day, to start with the National Blend of Models forecast as your starting point. And so at that point then, and even now more so for at least Western region, not sure about Alaska or Pacific region myself. So effectively, the base point for every forecast cycle is the National Blend of Models. And the National Blend of Models is a dynamically adjusted and blending of various weather models from sources including the United States models, the Canadian models, the European models, other ones as well from other countries. Perhaps I don't remember all the great details out of that, but that is the first guess that the forecasters are starting from. They are then given the opportunity to make edits on that first guess, and then ultimately, after those edits are made, the that forecast package is published to official, which is the NDFD. So in a lot of cases, the published forecast that's being forecast grids for NDFD are oftentimes unedited from the National Blend of Models. Now with that background, the National Blend of Models has, at least during summertime conditions and in our experience here in the Pacific Northwest, runs too moist. So the RHs are too high versus what ends up happening with reality. In its defense, National Blend of Models will take those biases and those errors and attempt to correct for them, but it generally takes several days for the NBM to respond. So hearing from my GAC counterparts in southern area, the conditions, fire weather conditions, at least across parts of the eastern seaboard, the NBM is just too slow to respond to those changes. And so it is entirely feasible that because of past directions given to the National Weather Service forecasters from their management, various management tiers, they may not be editing those RH grids at all, even for days 1, 2, or 3. But I don't want to make it sound any worse than it already does. You're going to have potentially forecasters that are super on top of it, and then you're going to have forecasters that it's wintertime, or fall. We don't need to worry about RH. Well, it depends on your fire seasons from our predictive services perspective. So ultimately, a lot of your forecasts are coming straight from the National Blend of Models, even through the official Weather Service forecast. So I will stop there, Scott, and let you open any follow-up questions, because
No,
I threw a
I
bunch of
appreciate
info
that.
there.
Yeah, John, I really do appreciate you, especially on the spot, doing that for me. You had a very well written email on that, and really clarify that very well. And I want to just highlight a couple of points of this. One, this is helpful for, I think, all users, because there's a better understanding of exactly how this forecast is being derived, what the biases are, and we can now start saying, okay, we understand where these biases may be occurring. And we can talk to the forecasters at the Weather Service and saying, yeah, we don't know why, like before when it was being manipulated very much more hands-on, we don't know why forecaster A might have done this and he adjusted the grid and now it's in the WIMS forecast. As opposed to now we can say, yeah, we understand that the gridded data is coming in, or it's typically a little bit, slower to respond when we have these sudden cold fronts, especially across the east, that are coming through really dry air, and it's not responding quick enough. And fire managers now should be able to start, we're going to start seeing these trends more periodically. We'll be able to anticipate these types of reactions going forward. And then we'll be able to also be able to know how those are going to impact fire danger outputs. Now, it doesn't help us with the official and, fire danger number outputs when you're saying I need to make a decision based on this. You're not going to be able to say, well, I'm going from a BI of 15 to a 21 and my breakpoint now changed, but you are going to be able to say, hey, it's been coming in drier, my BI is probably going to be higher, so I should potentially bump up my response or my staffing for the day or whatever you may be. So being able to have that transparency is what FEMS was trying to go for, is trying to take all the pieces and parts and layers that were originally within WIMS, uncover those so we can all start having the discussions and understanding all the pieces and parts that go into the fire danger outputs, not just the observations, but the forecasts as well, so that we can start reflecting on this, and be able to have these better discussions. Now the question continues, and I know there was always discussions happening about, okay, what type of impact do we have on making or having the Weather Service adjusting the forecast, to really being more site specific for us. There were conversations happening in the Northwest, I think as of even last year, right, John, about trying to do some more forecast manipulation. And the way that things are right now and the way that this is set up, the Weather Service is aware of, I think, the pros and cons of, each model and the biases that it has. And I think it's a different discussion now to be having with them and saying, okay, this is what I've been seeing. Can I usually expect this to be occurring so that I can anticipate this better? It's easier to know if you're at least consistently off in one direction, it's easier to make determinations and make decisions than opposed to being, I'm off sometimes high, I'm off sometimes low, and I'm not sure which is going to be on this one. At least when we know that these models are biased in one direction or another, we can have a much better discussion and anticipate these processes going forward. So I just kind of wanted to open that up to that, how that information, what John just told us, plays into how to, go forward into fire danger itself. So I wanted to see if there's any discussions or people have been seeing anything else going around the forecast. And I guess overall just questions for John or myself on the forecast going forward at this point, or what they've been seeing.
Yeah, let me follow up a bit, Scott.
Yep.
First of all, I say if you don't like the weather forecast RH, as an example, wind is another issue. It's those two elements are probably the biggest problems as it relates to fire danger. If you don't like the weather forecasts side of the coin, don't complain to Scott. Say he's not going to be able to help you with that. I really, really strongly encourage you to reach out to your local weather service offices and open that dialogue with them. Bring them case examples, case studies, or just bring them, hey, screen captures of, hey, this is what the weather was forecasted. The minimum RH was forecasted to be out of FEMS, and then here's what they actually were. And again, if the weather pattern is locked in for several days, NBM and ultimately, I think the National Digital Forecast Database, NDFD, to get Stephen Ballmer's question there, National Digital Forecast Database, that will ultimately get a lot better and a lot closer to the reality, but you still need to have several days, and that's just kind of not how fall fire season works, as I understand it, in the eastern areas there and southern areas. So, yeah. So again, the big thing is just absolutely reach out to your local weather offices. You got to start there, at least bring up their awareness, and that's what I did kind of in anticipation of this transition to FEMS with the Oregon and Washington weather offices that have the responsibility. I kind of brought us all together. It's like look, there needs to be awareness on both sides of how the recipe is put together, and I saw mixed results, but ultimately you can't just say it's always going to be high, or it's the RH is always going to be too high, or it's always going to be too low, because different stations, and depending on where they work into the whole process regarding like elevation and exposures and all that, some might be high, some might be low consistently, but some might bounce around. So there's no simple one solution is going to fix all of this. So again, I really just encourage everybody to start from your own grassroots level. Talk to your weather offices. At least for my 20 years as a weather service forecaster, I think I can easily speak for every one of them. All 5,000 folks within the weather service, that they want to do right. They want to get the forecast as accurate as possible. They're not just going to blow you. I would hope that they don't blow you off. Again, just come to them with data, because that'll help them at least start digging in.
Thanks, John. Yeah, and I will, if anybody's interested in the document that I had and that was shown online, and it's really the forecast process that we have that was established with the Weather Service for this and how we get the files. please let me know. I can share it with you. It's very specific. It really isn't going to give you, I don't think, a lot more, but in case there were some questions and you're having, like, how does everything, how does the Weather Service actually do this? This was written up with the research branch of NOAA, and so it is still working to become a fully operational system. Some of the forecasters may not yet be fully aware of how we are getting the information. So if they don't know yet, please let me know, and we can also make sure that information is communicated around. So Chris, or Scott, you talked about, you're speaking to me, we always assume actual RH will be 5 to 10% lower than predicted during spring, summer, or during the spring, fall, winter, and fall. Sometimes it's accurate. The local NWS forecasters are seemingly newer and have said they aren't comfortable with editing the model outputs. It seems to be better in the summer, maybe because we have more stable patterns. So just kind of confirming really what John was just talking about there. What the East is, some of the stuff people in the East are seeing. So, and it was particularly, relevant in the past week and a half, 2 weeks. Virginia, that area, they had a outbreak of some fires, and they had a cold front that came through, and they just consistently were not seeing the RH's forecast as low as what they were seeing of the observed coming in that day. And that really kind of spoke to those cold fronts coming through, making those dramatic changes, and the model just not catching up at that time. So
yeah, I just want to say thank you, because I know they have newer forecasters, right? It used to be I felt like they were manipulating it a lot, and but I've always wondered why that is. I think some of it is human dynamics of, like, the younger people, especially, they're trained to the model, not to the people, I guess. But it makes sense now, if it's coming from that a model with a slow react bias.
Yeah, Scott, I mean, the difference between WIMS and FEMS is that WIMS forced a forecaster to create some text and basically look at it, or at least give them the opportunity to look at that text. Whereas the current process, it's largely hands-off once that forecast is published. So that's the difference, is there's a step that's been removed. I mean, ultimately, I think it's a more efficient way, and will certainly pave the road to have gridded fire danger, like true gridded fire danger, because the Weather Service forecast, with WIMS and currently with FEMS, you're getting a single point. Yeah. And but I really think that the future, as we progress towards fire danger assessment, is now you're getting at least or that potential is there to have not just that 2.5 square kilometer, or about roughly 1 square mile point. You can now fill in all those gaps with what is at least hoped to be meteorologically reasonable data, feeding into what's hopefully a fire physics based reasonable assessment of how that data is going to change fire danger. So growing pains, I think, to get to a larger goal.
Yes, I still appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And Steve put in the chat, the process seems very similar to contacting the local office when a spot forecast is off, providing them the observations and fine-tuning their forecast. That's exactly right. So other thoughts or discussion pieces on the forecast? And I think also getting into the gridded discussion piece as well with this is we are dealing with, the we're mixing modeled information and spot weather observations very heavily, and it's very difficult to do. We're never going to be 100% accurate between these two, between modeled and observations. And the grids are never going to exactly match what the observations are. They can be close, but it's going to be very hard when you start getting site specific, like what we're doing with that individual square, to know exactly what's going to happen on there. It's just remember that we're dealing with model data. When we look at forecasts and you're dealing with a individual observation at that one point. And even when you start looking at, if you start looking at even weather apps that have, like Weather Underground, that you have huge weather networks of, all local people, and you can see even the temperature differences between, a mile away. You can have 3-5 degree temperature differences and RHs that are different on very small scales. And so when you start thinking about the complexities that are actually occurring out there with actually observed weather and all the local influences that are happening to that individual point, as opposed to what the model is trying to assume what's happening at more of a broader scale, you can see where some of the inaccuracies, I don't want to say inaccuracies, but that's where some of the differences between these two systems are really starting to show. And as we move towards gridded fire danger, this is only going to start to become more and more apparent between the two systems, observed and gridded information. So yes, gridded is going to be able to give us some great information and fill in a lot of the gaps, but it's going to have a certain place for it, and it will help us with certain questions, but it won't answer all questions. So. Other questions, comments on that? John, I really do thank you very much for jumping in and talking about that. I know there's a lot of questions that come around with this, and I really do appreciate the support. So
you're welcome, Scott.
All right. Let's see here. I'm trying to think what else we have moving forward. So I mean, the next steps after we do the 3.5 release, which is the December release, we're working through some of the UAT right now. The next steps after this are going to be, well, I shouldn't be, we are working to get the gap filled weather for 2023, 2024, and up to October 31st of 2025. So what that's going to entail would be, we asked DRI to do another gap fill, provide us the missing information from our gridded weather sources. And then it would also do a QC of data. So it's not going to replace any of the missing data or any of the extraneous data, but it will flag it. So what we had been seeing in the historical climatology of our information, we are planning to update that as well. And we hope to have that part of the new information. So when weather stations were down, when sensors went off, we've been hearing a lot about that as of lately, that, hey, my, sensor went out on the station. Can we get the missing data? That's what we're working on, trying to get that all caught up, so that by early December or mid-December, you guys will have the most robust and no gaps in your weather data going forward. So if you choose to utilize and expand out your climatology, you may be able to do that. Again, understand if you do expand out your climatology, your values may be slightly off from what any of the seasonal trend charts show in FEMS, because we're not going to change our seasonal trend charts from 2005 to 2022 at this point. So that's one of the other pieces that we're trying to add in there right now, is that weather piece. We are also working on, and this is again through the NWCG, the weather subcommittee is trying to come up with some thresholds for how to do and replace any QC data. The eventual piece that we want to get to by early next spring is one, we want to be able to have it so that we are doing, like once daily, or every a couple times a week, we're going back in and doing both gap filling and QCing data moving forward, so that when you see it, a station sensor goes out, if it doesn't get caught, it's going to get flagged. We'll be able to then go in there and gap fill or backfill it off of the gridded information, so that we don't have the gaps that we're seeing. We don't have the 200-mile-an-hour winds that we're seeing anymore. We want to have that so it's fully the automated process. Again, this is where that combination between gridded and point. So we're going to have a mixture of information coming in on these observations. What we're going to be calling observations, we're going to be having a mixture of gridded information in there as well as actual on the ground observations. So understand that you will have kind of that mixture of information and that mixture of data going through what we have right now. Yes, we have some semblance of it depending on the quality of the station, but it's going to become a little bit more apparent as we go forward that, this is how the data is going to be gap filled. This is how we're going to be QCing the information and checking to see if it's, considered accurate or not, or if we're trying to get rid of any of that erroneous information. So we're moving towards that in this next year. That's really where we want to be going through next fire season. And then also being able to have recalculations happening almost on a basis, so that when they gap fill and refill, anytime that we're missing gaps, we're doing the fire danger at the same time as that. That's really been one of the problems that we've been seeing over the past 4 to 5 months now that we've been running fire danger, is we don't have an automated recalculation process for fire danger. So when we go back and we are gathering missing data from WX weather, and we populate that back in there. So people are downloading files, FW21s, and saying, hey, I have more weather data than I do fire danger outputs in FEMS. That's because we aren't doing the recalculation process. Again, there's some reasons. One, we just don't have the process established yet for that. And there's quite a bit that goes into making that happen and how we're actually going to do that. So that's the other process that we plan to get moving forward here in the next 6 months, is having that automatic recalculation process going forward. So again, trying to just continue with the inputs, continue with more of that data integrity, and trying to help out with the clarity of what's happening with the system, so that we can all start speaking, so we're all talking the same language as we go forward. Questions on any of the stuff that I just brought up about data integrity, weather data gap filling, and what we're doing? Yeah, Abe?
Hey, Scott. Along those lines, I'm just curious if you kind of have an idea moving forward. Is this going to be an annual update, or multi-year, or every 2 years, or what's the schedule kind of looking for to add in or expand on the POR, and then pretty much the recalc that follows that?
Yeah, so that's the great thing about this, is once we get to the process, it's actually will be like, I don't want to say real time, but like once a day, once a week, you'll be getting this new gap filled, and you won't be missing weeks of data. You won't be missing months of data. It'll do this. It'll systematically continually do this process for us behind the scenes. So you're not going to be getting new large pieces of information or new large PORs coming forward. It's all going to be established.
Okay, copy that. So pretty much
So-
after this incorporation of the last few years, we'll have maybe one more that fills it in for the remainder of 2025, and then it'd be pretty much daily updated.
That's pretty much the hope, is, and I don't know if it's going to be daily yet. We're still trying to figure out all the logistics of how everything's going to function in there and what really the time frame is needed. I mean, is it once a week would be enough for everybody? Like, okay, I'm missing something, or do we need to go into a daily type of scenario? And that really plays into which grids we pull from, because there's and John, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's the RTMA that's the near real time grid that updates once, is it every day or every hour? And then there's the IRMA, which is the back, and it's a little bit more accurate, but it's a more delayed. Is that how that works? Are those the different
Yeah,
grids?
the real-time mesoscale analysis updates hourly,
Mhm.
but any of the bias correction efforts that I talked about occur from the, oh gosh, unified mesoscale reanalysis. And yeah, that runs kind of off of about a 6-hour time lag.
Right.
So trying to bring
So,
in, the latest, greatest data.
correct. That has some correction to it, right?
Yeah, there is filtering that goes on, which is a whole nother bone of contention with me back in my weather service days, in that it is a difficult process for weather service forecasters to turn stations on or off.
Mhm.
It is not trivial and time consuming and laggy. They're just submitting a form that somebody else has to take the time to do this. And yeah, I just will stop there.
Yep. Okay. So, maybe why I bring that up is that it's that, like, because there are these different models that actually feed that, we need to know which one is the correct one to be pulling from. So as you delay, you get a more, I want to say, more accurate reading or observe, of the grid of what actually occurred on that site, because you're getting more of the station information. So if you want, like, near real time, like, we could do it once an hour, but just understand that it's not going to be the most accurate information. So if we delay it, say once a week or every, once a day, we may be getting more information, but it's more delayed. Now, so there's a cost benefit ratio that we need to understand and figure out what works the best for us. I mean, do we need to know exactly that fire danger for the next, for the hour, the previous hour? Or is it okay? It's okay if we miss like a day of data, and we know that it's gonna, when you miss 3 or 4 hours of it, yeah, your 1 hour's, flop out for a couple hours, but then within the next 2 or 3 readings after that, you're right back on track where you would have been. So, so we're trying to get all that weighed in there so we know how often to do this gap filling, backfilling of our data, and then recalculation process. But we're trying to do it so that it's as about real time as you could hope for, and that we don't have any of these large scale like recalculation processes that we used to have to go through, which will ultimately help out in all the analysis work that everyone's doing down the road. So yeah, one or two more of these gap fills or POR updates, and then we should be coming definitely into a much more stable environment. The only other addition or caveat to that would be, say they come up with, they come up with a new science that says, hey, we've got this new model and it's really much better for measuring precip, and we've got different ways of QCing your entire the data set, and we do the analysis on that and look at the weather data set, the entire period of record, and say, yeah, this is a better way to do weather estimates or to do precip estimates, and they redo the entire period of record at that point. Those are the things that we would want to limit, to once every year, couple of years at the most type of thing, when we'd want to be getting that type of scale when we redo the entire period of record. But that's going to be a new science came out or a new algorithm came out that has been, worked on and studied and tested, that yes, it does provide us with better analytics. Now, with that, don't think that I wouldn't anticipate like catastrophic changes in really the outputs of fire danger, because we're really fine tuning things down from, like, the 85th percentile down to like the 90th percentile type of stuff. I mean, real small little fixes on the weather side and inputs, and that really doesn't have that dramatic of an impact overall on fire danger. It's just not that sensitive. Excuse me, fire danger is just not quite that sensitive of a model when we start looking at it. But those are types of things that we're looking at down the road. So,
Hey, that's awesome. Appreciate that, Scott.
yep. Eamon, I know you got a question in there. Any communications with PG&E to add their station networks somewhere around 1,600 stations to California? Not yet. We haven't gotten there. So this whole excursion that we've been doing with getting ASOS brought in, getting in the mesonets brought in from the east, we are starting to understand the processes that need to occur with this, and really the what needs to happen in order to calculate fire danger and all of the different inputs. And I really wish Chuck Maxwell was still on the calls. because he'd be much better at explaining this than I would, and maybe on the next call I can have him jump on. But really making sure that everything is in line with the requirements to calculate fire danger is one of the biggest pieces, and it's a very time consuming process. So we're working on, or Chuck's been working on, getting a key for us built up so that we be able to get everything in line so that the data is summarized. I don't know what PG&E does, if it's every like 5 minutes that they have their network updates or every 2 minutes, but we need the once hourly summarized data. That's why the RAWs was set up. That's why we have RAWs. That's why it still works really well with us, because we don't have to do anything to calculate fire danger, and everything was based off of that. But many of these other networks are out there on a different time scale, and they don't have the requirements that we need to calculate fire danger when we talk about an hourly summarized weather data set. So yes, the options are there. The idea is there that we'd start being able to bring in these networks. We're going to have to start doing, again, some cost benefits on some of that as well. On, okay, how far are we away from gridded to where is it going to be beneficial for us to be bringing in, PG&E or, any of these other Weather Underground, whatever, all these other networks that are out there, and starting to bring these in. So, John?
Yeah, I kind of want to bring up a point. Again, from my experience on trying to monitor a gridded weather observation standpoint or observation basis, the RTMA and the IRMA, more stations isn't necessarily good. One of the things that we would run into a lot is that you might get station like okay, say you've got a mesonet station that is really good at showing wind, but it happens to be surrounded by 4 stations within the same grid box that does not show wind very well. What do you want to represent? Do you want to represent that grid box as, not very good wind, or do you want to represent that grid box as, as windy, because of where the station is and the threats, or at least the type of resources under threat from that wind? So, you can either manually pick and choose what stations you want, keeping in mind that a lot of these stations come in and out every day and such, just because of maintenance issues. Or do you want to average all the stations within the grid box? So if you get that scenario where you've got 1 good station and 4 that don't show good wind, you're losing data. You're losing valuable data. So again, more stations isn't always good, and more data is definitely not always good within the weather regime there. Oh,
Great
and
point,
then
John.
and then Scott, have you along those lines of the mesonets, have you guys looked at all at the Synoptic Labs data feed? That's basically what took over from the University of Utah Meso West.
That's
Kind
who
of their
we're working with.
public-private partnership. Okay.
Yeah, we have a contract and through them, and that contract is available to all Forest Service. So if anybody wants to be able to pull the synoptic weather data, they want access to that weather feed, that is all available through Synoptic, and all you have to do is contact Synoptic, let them know you're with the Forest Service, and they can give you the enterprise level access to their API. So, John, I don't know if that helps you at all as well, but I'm, it is there and available. So
Yeah, no, it was just one of those options. I wasn't sure if
Mhm.
I can't remember talking about it with you before. So anyway.
Yeah. We've been working with them for a couple of years now on getting that, and we're trying to, I guess, understand. That's where we're getting all the different networks. That's how we get the ASOS. That's how we're getting these, the mesonets. And I know they have access to multiple other different networks as well. So. Eamon, did that answer your questions about PG&E? Or do you have any other questions, discussion topics on that?
Yeah, I'm good, Scott. I was just curious.
Yep. Okay.
Thanks.
Yep. That kind of rounded out the topics that I had for today, but I want to see if there's any other discussion topics that people have on their mind before I kind of transition a little bit into what looking at tomorrow. Yeah, go ahead, Eamon.
Yeah, just a question related to the next release. And you mentioned the ability to edit station catalogs. Obviously, when you edit a station catalog, it's going to change it for everyone in terms of the fire danger output. So I guess it's just, can you provide any more detail on kind of what that process might look like? Because, I'm concerned that if we don't have the right communication with the interagency group in an area that might use the same station, it could get changed without everyone being in the loop on that.
That's correct. So, Eamon, you're keying in exactly this. So the way, especially as we're displaying fire danger now, and knowing that, WIMS, when we would change the information, station owners just had the control to be able to go in and do that, and they didn't think about the impacts of the other agencies that may be utilizing that. So one of the first steps that we do have in this process, that we're going to be outlining, is that they need to have a communications plan and signed with all the interagency partners who utilize that site before we even go in and start thinking about how and that we'd actually implement any changes. It's not something that we want to go in there and make a change to a station, because exactly it. All agencies may not want to make the change to that. They may feel that that works for their area. And so we want to make sure that those communications are happening. FEMS is not, or myself, I'm not going to be the one that's going to determine if that is the, if that station is used by multiple multiple agencies or not. That is really going to be up to local areas. So we need to make sure that, hey, yeah, they've communicated that and they have it written and it's documented that these changes are going to occur, how it's going to occur, when it's going to occur, and that they all agree on what those values are that they would want to make that change to. So it needs to happen before that, because yes, it drastically impacts all agencies. So.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds like you guys are developing a solid process to make sure buy-in on that. So good to hear.
Yep. Yeah, I'm very cautious with this one. I know there's a lot of want to make changes very quickly to this system, but I'm just gonna state it here, is that I'm going at this very cautiously, because of the known impacts and what this is going to mean when we do a calculation, when we do a calibration. It's going to change that entire historical analysis for the entire period of record that night. And so once we change it, it changes it. And there's, if people aren't happy with it, we're going to have to go back and change it again. And it's going to do the recalculation process. It's not just recalculating, like we used to do in WIMS, where it was, you could set the timeline and you did it for the past year and that was all it was, right? This is going to recalculate the entire historical period of record. So. Other questions for me that I can answer or try to answer? All right, so tomorrow I do have the FEMS, I guess it's still called the WIMS FEMS updates, NFDRS call. And so just to let everybody know, there have been a few people have been really working a lot on, I know there's a lot of people probably working on their analysis and everything, but a couple of people have been really asking me a lot of questions about this. One, the forecast information, like how to SIG and all the information. So we're going to be kind of going over some of that information of where, and really the importance of understanding what stations you're coming together with, the questions that originally came up to me from these individuals of why they were seeing what they were seeing and how it was really significantly different, even in the forecast, and then what they were observing. And they had some real questions about how things were looking for fire danger going forward. The other one was a lot of the comparison information going between Fire Family Plus and FEMS, and looking at it like on an hourly basis, and really the inconsistencies that were between the two systems, and not sure why they were seeing that. So we're going to kind of focus on that tomorrow and some of these processes, some of the spreadsheets that people are coming up with to try and hopefully answer some of the questions that you might be encountering as you work through this in the next couple of months. If you're working with the data and saying, hey, why is this not lining up or what's not going on? There's a lot of really good people doing some great work on this, and I just want to let them share their experiences with it to hopefully, you know, open up some more conversations and open up some more, ideas of how to better represent the information that we have. So, so that's, anyways, that'll be what we're going to be going over tomorrow. I don't want to get too much into that today because I think it'd be some good discussion topics. So that's all I have for everyone. Unless there's any other questions, I'm willing to stand for a few more minutes, but otherwise I'm not going to have a call, obviously. I think I move these every other week. So for the time being, we're going to bump these back to every other week. If we need to, we can bring them back to every week. But I felt like with the transition that we've kind of gone through and people are getting into use or lose, all that stuff, that I just kind of bumped these back to every other week for the time being. Maybe we'll go back to every week during the spring timeframe. So thanks, everyone. We will see you, if not tomorrow, early December. And have a great Thanksgiving if I don't talk to you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.